Hey, Magic fans, welcome back. This is your captain speaking, and we're here today to talk about the top 15 Modern Horizons 2 cards that's going to impact the format. Now, with that said, as I went through and I got these top 15 guys, it was really hard for me to figure out what was what. I was going to do a top 10, but there's just so many good cards. And if you disagree or you have some insight or some things that you might think about, put them down in the comments below. Let me know what you think. Do you think I'm right? What are your thoughts on this? All in all, Modern Horizons 2 is going to cause a big shakeup in the modern format. And these are just, to me, some of my top picks of what's going to really impact modern from Modern Horizons 2. So, before we get started, guys, remember, put your tray tables and seat backs in your full upright position as the captain takes you on a flight down the future of Modern. And like, subscribe, hit that notification bell so you can see when all these videos come out. And put some comments down below, like I mentioned before. Help feed that YouTube engine for me so that algorithm can kick me up to the top to get a few more views. Also, if you're looking for some magic cards, it also helps support the channel. If you go into my description, I got a link to my eBay store from where I put all my cards I put on eBay from my fresh box opening videos, which next set of box opening videos will be Modern Horizons 2. So be on the lookout for that, because as soon as they come out and I start cracking boxes, they'll be on that eBay store, and you'll know exactly where they come from, what they look like, and you'll know they're packed fresh. Also, my email's in there too if you want to get there and give me a quick shout out or some topics to talk about, or just have a few questions. So, with all that said, guys, let's finally get into this and talk about Modern Horizons 2. So, first thing I want to do is talk about honorable mention. So, the entire Elemental Incarnation, I think, deserves an honorable mention here. Some are better than others, but they all have the ability to be extremely overpowered because of the evoke ability. The ones who have the most ability to be overpowered, as well, any of these you pair with an Ephemerate or a Flicker effect, which can be any of them technically in Modern. But the ones I think have the most power out of this, Solitude and Grief. The ability to constantly thought seize your opponent without actually, paying 2 life, and the ability to source the Plowshare stuff on a regular basis to as removal just seems busted. But with that said, the evoke cost means you're 2 for 1 yourself to get rid of a thing, which is not a real big deal. Force of Will does it all the time, right? That's a legacy thing, and that is still good. And if you can ephemerate this or flicker it in any way, shape, or form, it doesn't go away, so you can actually get more use out of it, keep it on the field as a creature. Until they're busted, though, I think these are just honorable mentions because their casting cost is high enough that the odds of you just straight flat casting them and getting use out of them will probably be a lot lower than normal. So you're going to have to 2 for 1 yourself. But depending on how Modern goes, this may be the future, guys. So I'd like to move on again with another honorable mention, the Scion of Draco. So I know a lot of people are going to be upset about this, and I get it. This card is busted, and it is. It's a sweet card. On turn 2, you could have a 4/4 flyer that gives all kinds of weird crap to every other color you have. But it's 12 mana and it doesn't get targeted by Fatal Push. However, there's lots of things that still kill this, guys. There's lots of black removal and other removal that just destroys creatures. Things like Flame Slash for 1 red can kill this for 4 damage. There's still a lot of good removal that can maybe usurp or maybe just replace the current removal set that people normally use. That makes this card just not as good. For example, Path to Exile. I mean, people running 4 paths. This thing does on turn 2. You've just basically, spent 2 mana to play Rampant Growth, which is fine. I'm not saying it's not. If it does stick around, it can really cause some headaches. But I just think the removal is just too good in Modern for this to be one of those breakout cards that's just going to warp the format. Is it going to be included? Is it going to be playable? Yes. But with Domain and all the other things you have to do to get this thing out there quick and easy, I think it only makes it an honorable mention. So moving on next to the next honorable mention, I can't get past Flame Blitz, guys. I'm sorry. It's an enchantment for 1 red that just slaps Planeswalkers across the face with the pimp hand every instep for 5 damage. Which basically means if you come across a Planeswalker deck, you put this on the battlefield, Planeswalkers die in 2 turns regardless. It stops Karn, it stops Lily, it stops most Planeswalkers, it stops on the first slap. So, and it stays in play and does it every turn, which means they only get to use their Planeswalkers once. I think this is a great sideboard card, maybe even a starter depending on how the format goes. Plus, it has cycling. If you don't need 2 of them out there, cycle it, get you a new card, right? Great card for sideboards, real good honorable mention, but because it only deals with Planeswalkers, not good enough for the top 15. Now, the next thing I like to talk about is the sleeper of the set. That's right, guys, Profane Tutor. I don't have this in my top 15 because if you just cast it the way it is in a vacuum, it's not all that great. Now, it is a tutor, which means EDH and everything's going to drive the price of this up because everybody wants tutors. And for one black and a colorless, you got to spend it for 2 turns. But why do I think this card's a sleeper? Because they printed so many cards with Cascade, and they're cheap cards. This has no casting cost. I think there's going to come a time when people are going to find out how to abuse this in a Cascade deck where they'll be able to cast those cards that give you that Cascade, hit the Profane Tutor, and then go get the big Haymaker out of their deck, put it into their hand. So basically, for example, you'll see these Cascade cards later because they're really high on my list because they're just so good for 2-for-1s for the mana cost that you basically get a body plus a card out of your deck that you need at the time. It could be a land, guys. It could be removal. It could be more draw spell. It could be anything that actually shape your hand into something special. And I think that's why this is the sleeper of the set that nobody's realized yet that's going to be played a lot of 4-ofs in the format. So, moving on now, let's actually get into this. We have number 15. That's right, Dakon Blackblade, the Shadow Slayer, Planeswalker, has made it to number 15. He barely eked in there, guys. Black, blue, white has plenty of removal already. Plus, if you play him on turn 3, he's only a 3/3, and if you -3 to kill a creature, basically he's a 3-mana exile target creature, which isn't bad, but not great. So he's really not on par until you hit 4 or 5 land on the battlefield. In a control deck, that's fine. If you can lay him and surveil him once, that way you can take him down the next time, that would work too. But again, a lot of conditions, really good card, but it's going to take a special deck to really abuse this card so that you can see the power of it. And that's why this is number 15. Moving right along to number 14. That's right, guys. It's Turok the Dread Cantor. This card's got lots of possibilities, guys. A black and a 1 for a 2/1. His kicker ability to make the opponent discard 2 cards is sweet. So for 4 mana, you can get a 4/3 because anytime they discard a card, now mind you, anytime he gets a +1/+1 counter. So for 4 mana, you can lay him as a 4/3 and make him discard 2 cards at random, just like the old him of Turok. And that's amazing. Plus, he's pro-white, means he can't be pathed. He's easily boltable, though. Lots of other removal spells can get rid of him. But in a solid black deck, you could lay him on turn 2 to draw out removal. Because what are they going to do? Let this 2/1 sit on the field while you just start tearing apart their hand in a black deck and he gets bigger and bigger and bigger? No. He's going to be a 2-for-1 where he basically is going to be play play target creature and remove said removal spell from opponent's hand. So with that said, though, and the heavy cost on black, it does make him really hard to use. But he can be busted in the right decks. That's why he comes in at number 14. Moving right along next, we have Caldera Complete. This is number 13 because this card's never going to hit the field unless you cheat it in. You can cheat it in with Dakon, which is kind of a cool thing. Also, with Dakon having white, we all know this is going to be the new go-to for the living weapon card for Stoneforge Mystic decks. Because not only is it indestructible, it gives the creature indestructible. It has haste, it has trample, it has first strike. It has all that and a bag of chips, and it brings its friends with him. It's just nuts how good this card is in those kind of decks. So this is going to be the new reason why a Stoneforge Mystic must die the moment it hits the battlefield. Which is also why I think Draco's not going to be very good, because removal is going to have to be rampant to keep Stoneforges off the field, because the minute you get to tap one and put this into play, the game may very well just end. So that's why this comes in at number 13, because it's going to have to be cheated, and there's not a lot of ways to do that just yet. Moving right along to number 12, good old Counterspell. That's right, boys. Counterspell's in the house from Legacy. No more blue and ones. We have straight up Counterspell. It's just better. It's a very promising card, very easy to do. It's a powerhouse card from back in the day when I played back in Ice Age and things like that. This was the thing. If there 2 blue mana open, I better think about what I want to cast, right? It only comes in at number 12 because we already had good counterspells already for this kind of environment because it was so mana light. But this is an upgrade to give you a positive counter instead of the possibility of somebody paying to prevent a counter. So it is a slight upgrade, but not real high on my list. Moving right along next, we have Esper Sentinel at number 11. So Esper Sentinel has actually proven in a couple test games that we've seen on the online and a few I've played myself with just proxies to be a powerhouse on turn 1. Because you lay this on turn 1, if they decide to kill it for whatever their reason is or cast anything on their turn 1, you're going to draw a card off of it, which is bonkers. This is the exact kind of powerhouse that EDH players like to play with Smothering Tide, Rhystic Study, and things like that. But it's on a creature, it costs 1, and it basically says, hey, pay 2 mana or pay 1 mana above what your normal removal spell is to kill this, or I'm just going to draw a card to replace it, which means you basically get to 2 for 1 your opponent. Card is very sweet, however, because it's small, it may not be a big thing, but this could be what pushes over those affinity decks when it comes to artifacts. Now we're getting in the top 10, guys. And sliding in at number 10 is the Territorial Kavu. I wasn't real high on this to begin with, guys, but after seeing this in action in a few deck tests, I mean, a green and a red to make a 4-4 or maybe even a 5-5 if you're going to play a Triome on turn 2 is just nuts. And not to mention, notice it's star. It doesn't keep the stats when the land comes into play, or when it comes into play from the land. If you play an additional land, you can get it higher. So it's very easy to get this to a 5-5 for 2 mana. I mean, this is like Tarmogoyf's little brother, or maybe even big brother, depending how you look at it, because the ability to attack and then discard a card and draw is insane. Plus, the ability to actually exile a card from a graveyard. This comes with built-in graveyard disruption for anybody running any kind of graveyard shenanigans, which would make their life really more difficult to win if they're relying on their graveyard. So this one here comes in at number 10, and it's a powerhouse. And when you're looking at red-green, it may not just be a red-green deck. This could be in Jund. It's just like, Jund and this could be Tarmogoyf and this and a lot of other things. This could really be something, guys. So moving right along, next, number 9, we have Murktide Regent. So this thing is a powerhouse. I've tested it as well. So 2 blue and 5 may seem like a lot for a 3/3 flyer, but it has Delve, and we all know Delve cards are often broken. And this one, when you actually Delve cards that are instant and sorceries, every one of those you Delve gives it a +1/+1 counter. You can make this thing up to an 8/8 for 2 mana. So this slides right into all those blue decks with counter spells and vast removal, with the Insectile Aberration, like all that stuff that you normally do. Arc-like Phoenix decks with lots of cantrips and things like that. Any of those kind of decks that have a lot of cantrips that normally run blue, this is easily a finisher for them, and it cannot be fatal pushed. If you exile enough instants and sorceries, you can't flame slash it or any other spell that does large amounts of damage like 5 or 6 because it can be bigger. So even though it has all that going for it, it's heavy in the blue side. Not all decks run blue, so it kind of drops it down on the list just a little bit. So that's my take on Murktide Regent. Moving on to the next one, guys. Number 8, we have Grist, the Hunger Tide. So our next Planeswalker is that number 8. Grist is green, black, and 1 for a 3 loyalty. As long as it's anywhere else, it counts as a 1/1 insect. And I think that's the biggest thing that's going to help this card, is because when you +1, you create a 1/1 black insect token creature, you mill a card. If you get an insect, you can mill again this way and add another loyalty counter. Basically meaning if you have a Grist on top of your deck and you just played a Grist and you blind hit one, you can mill it twice, get 2 insects, this thing's at 5, and then it's just bonkers, because then you can start sacrificing your creatures to destroy target creatures and or planeswalkers for 2. So if you already have a creature on the field, and in black-green you probably do, you can lay this -2, kill the biggest threat on the field, plus still have 1 loyalty on it, and then start chaining it. Not to mention the fact that because outside of the format, outside the game, when he's not on a battlefield, he's considered a 1/1 insect. Not only does he trigger himself, but he also can be hit by Collective Company. How bonkers is that? So keep that in mind as well. This card has lots of possibilities, especially at cheap cost. It comes in, it doesn't kill itself, it can defend itself by making blockers. This card's really high, especially on the Jund side, for maybe a new style of Jund when it comes to playing these kind of decks. Moving on to number 7. Number 7, we have Damn. And that's right, Damn is right. Why is it just Damn on number 7? Because Destroy target creature and it can't be regenerated. That stops a lot of things like Boral's Charm, saving creatures, among other things. Now this is a sorcery, so that probably won't happen too much, but it does stop regenerations of every form, which is kind of cool. But the best thing about this card, guys, is not so much the 2 black to destroy anything, it's the overload. Imagine, if you will, you're playing a Jund with Grist or whatever, and this is your removal spell, and someone lays a non-targetable creature. Maybe it has hexproof. Maybe they have cards that give it hexproof, and you know that because you've seen one already, or you know it's in their hand because you thought seized them. You simply wait, you overload it, guaranteed kill. It makes the card universal not only for spot removal, but mass removal as well. This card has so much potential as a removal card that I think it could be the very next big thing in the new Modern Horizon format. So that's why this card here is at number 7. So moving right along, next we have Bloodbraid Marauder. And this is what I was talking about, guys. A red and 1 for a 3/1. He can't block, but if you have Delirium, which is 4 cards of different types in your graveyard, he has Cascade. This is the kind of guy on turn 2 that if you can, I mean, I've seen it in testing. I've seen it on a couple channels too. You know, you can easily get to Delirium on turn 3 when you're getting ready to cast, or turn 2 when you're getting ready to cast this guy by, fetching and putting a land in the graveyard, casting a bauble, putting it in the graveyard, thought seizing your opponent, and maybe even something else, and you can easily on turn 2 cast him with Delirium and hit Profane Tutor and go get the next big thing, like, I don't know, Shardless Agent, Bloodbraid Elf. Like, a whole deck of Cascade could be made and be full of good beaters that do nothing but give value and just overrun your opponent. And he is where that starts. And that's why he's number 6 on the list. Moving right along. Next, speaking of Shardless Agent and Cascade, here it is at number 5. We all know it. We all love it. A blue, a green, a colorless for a 2/2 with Cascade. Once again, it's just bonkers. You could even cascade this into the red one, then into your Profane Tutor. There's just so much. I mean, Profane Tutor along with other things just make this card so versatile and so good that it's just insane. And that's why this card is number 5. And there's not a whole lot to say. 3 mana for a 2/2 that gives you value from an extra creature. What more could you want in life at number 5? Moving on to number 4, we have Persist. And you might think to yourself, why would you call this at number 4, Clyde? Why Captain, what's you're thinking? Well, for a black and a colorless, this is the real powerhouse to the Reanimator decks. Return target non-legendary creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield with a -1/-1 counter on it. It's basically Animate Dead, but you only can target non-legendaries. And with that said, as I looked at a lot of the non-legendaries we have out there, there are some good ones. For example, there's the new Archon they printed that's a 6/6 that when it attacks, the opponent discards a card, loses 3 life, you draw a card, you gain 3 life. Like, who wouldn't want that giant 6/6 flyer, well, 5/5 after this gets on it, on turn 2? Like, seriously. And that's just one of a plethora of cards that would be great to animate from the yard that are not legendary. I mean, there's tons of them. I'm not going to get into them right now, but this could be what we needed to make animator decks more viable and actually see them start picking up a strong presence in the new Modern Horizons format. As we move on to number 3, that's right, guys, here it is. It's the Ignoble Hierarch. You knew it had to be on the list. Noble Hierarch is just one of the powerhouse cards of the format, has been for a long time, and now we have a Jund version with Exalt. Like I mentioned, guys, you can play this on turn 1, and then when you lay your 3/1 on turn 2, it's easy to have 3 mana access so you can get that Delirium before you start casting spells. Plus, when it would attack, it'd be a 4/2. Shardless Agent becomes a 3/3. It itself is a 1/1 if you need to swing in with it. Plus, it's a mana rock. It is the best of all worlds. Everybody loved Noble Hierarch, but it was so thin because of the decks that could go in. This opens this up for everything. You can play this in just black green. You can play it in black red. You can play it in the whole Jund package. This is an all-around great card, and it's going to really change the style of decks that we see in this color pie. So this thing's at number 3, and if you don't believe me, I don't know what to say about that. Coming in at number 2, guys, we have the Doffy Voidwalker. This thing is a beast. So for 2 black, you get a 3/2, which is a pretty good rate. Plus it has Shadow, which it means it can't be blocked. So you can easily lay this on turn 2, show your opponent, hey, you've got 7 turns if nothing else happens to live before I kill you with this. Plus, if a card be put into the opponent's graveyard from anywhere, you exile it instead, put a void counter on it. Anything with a void counter on it, you can tap the Doffy Voidwalker and just cast the card for free. I mean, what more would you want in life? You play this on turn 2. On turn 3, you know, you Thought Seize, Cabal, whatever. Let's say you Thought Seize and someone lays a big, and they've got a big Nappy Planeswalker, or they've got the Murktide Regent, or they're playing an Animator deck and they have that Archon. Put that thing in a sideboard, tap it, sack this. Now you've got a big Nappy Planeswalker or big Nappy creature on the field for as little as 2 mana on turn 3. This just screams busted every step of the way. Plus, with other cards like Turok, the Cantor, who can make them discard with the extra kicker, and all the other discard spells that can just rip your opponent's hand apart so they can't do anything. This is solid number 2 because there's so many ways to abuse this card that we probably haven't even seen yet. So, now we'll move on to number 1. Drum roll, please. That's right, there's no monkeying around here. Ragavan, the Nimble Pilferer, Monkey Pirate, is number 1 on the list to change Modern forever. And you may think to yourself, Captain, I don't believe you. Well, let's go on a journey, if you will, please. Turn 1, Ragavan, Nimble Pilferer on the battlefield. You swing on turn 2. You got your second land. You swing. They flip over. Insect Aberration, Shardless Agent, whatever. Because it gives you a treasure, you can cast 3 mana spells on your turn 2. You could flip over their Liliana or their Grist or their Renin 6 and be like, wow, thanks for that. And now you're playing cards off the top of their deck without depleting the cards in your hand. And so now they have to deal with the cards that you're playing from their deck with the cards in their hand while you keep cards in your hand. And they can't let this monkey just keep hitting them in the face. They have to deal with it. So I would run 4, plus there's the dash ability to give it haste when you need to get that last 2 points of damage in. The ability to ramp constantly with treasure tokens and exile the opponent's top card, which might be some of their best cards, is just insane. I've seen this thing in action, and I've watched the brokenness of this. If you don't understand how good this thing could be, you've got to play it, guys. Like, some of the explosive things that can happen with this card is just insane. And the worst thing that happens is maybe they bolt it. Oh well, it's a legendary creature. I'm running 4 of them. So if I've got 2 in my hand, I lay one on turn 1, they bolted on turn 1. I'm okay with that because that second one was dead anyway, right? So it's actually freeing up cards in your hand to keep playing because they have to deal with it. And if you get scared and you catch them tapped out, you don't want to leave them on the field, you can dash it for 2. If you've got 4 mana, you dash this for 2. That'll give you a treasure token. That's 3. That'll cast almost anything in the deck. Imagine on turn 1 laying this, and then on turn 2 you swing, you hit them in the face, and you get their Territorial Kavu, or you get their Tarmogoyf, right? And you just cast it on that turn. That is just crazy, guys. This is the powerhouse. There's a reason this thing's expensive, and I honestly don't think it's expensive enough. This one very well could be close to ban worthy just because of how much it manipulates and just warps the format. I don't want to see that happen because I think it's kind of cool, but I think there's going to come a point where everybody's going to get tired of getting punched by the monkey. Or donkey. Technically monkey punch. Monkey punch worse than donkey punch? Anyway, guys, moving right along. That's number 1. That's our list of top 15 cards and our honorable mentions plus the sleeper of the set. Thanks for watching, and as always, guys, the pre-release is coming up the 11th at your local game stores. Get out there to your LGSs, show some support, play some pre-release, have some fun, take your friends, enjoy, and remember, until next time, be kind. And me and the monkey will see you at the pre-release.